Hey, how y'all doing? I don't know why we only on. Let's bring it up. Facebook. Do we want to do Instagram or do we want to do Periscope? What we want to do today, bro? What we want to do? Let's do Periscope. Save changes. Hey. Go live. Yes, we are live. Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Tayla Andre. Waking up with Tayla Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. So let me tell you how. What was it on Tuesday? On Tuesday, I came in here and we were like, go with the flow. Just life is what it is. Just go with the flow. Let me tell you how yesterday kicked me in ass all day. And I really had to sit here like, go with the flow, Tayla. Just go with the flow. Breathe. Take a look at your situation. Like I had to do all 12 steps, but I failed epically. I epically failed yesterday at the 12 steps. The 12 steps in order to. I'm so disappointed, y'all. I'm really disappointed. So, all right, we leave the studio, and while I'm leaving the studio, I get a call from my homegirl, and I love her to death. I absolutely love her. But if we can have real conversations about real friends, like my friend is going through everything right now. And she was like, Tayla, can you call me a Lyft? Can you call me an Uber? Like, I really need you right now. And I'm like, okay, absolutely. Whatever you need. So I go ahead and I call a Lyft, and long story short, she doesn't show up. So she doesn't show up. I'm charged this monies because she doesn't show up. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I have no control over that. There's nothing that I can do. Woosah, I'm over it. Then I get a call from somebody else who's just like, you owe us X amount of dollars. Mind you, we just had a whole conversation about scamming yesterday. And so while we're having a conversation on scamming, I'm over here being scammed. Talk about the irony. So I'm like, okay, nothing you can do to control it. Woosah, go with the flow. But yet this is compacting, like on top of each other. Next. And it's back to back. And I'm getting annoyed because I'm over here woosahing, but at the same time that I'm woosahing, I'm annoyed because this is not supposed to be like, this is not the way my life is set up. This is not normalcy for me. I'm annoyed. And so then from there, I get a letter in the mail. Mind you, it's dated August 31st, and yesterday was the 9th. Today's the 10th. And it says, you are 11 days past due on your car note. And I'm like, I'm not. So I went from, long story short, I failed yesterday. So I just wanted to let you know, because I sit here and I boast about how these amazing things that I'm able to do and how great I am and all of these things about the wonderful Tayla Andre. But I also want you guys to know how human I am and how messed up I am. And like, we on the same playing field, boo. At the end of the day, I am no different, no better. I don't claim to be. And I struggled. I struggled yesterday to go with the damn flow because I was annoyed and on top of, like it just was, I wish I could cuss the way that I really want to cuss because it would just be a whole sentence of cuss words because that's how annoyed I was. I was so annoyed. And I fail. And you fail too. You're going to fail, baby. Like, don't think for 5 seconds that going with the flow is easy. Don't think for 5 seconds that, everybody is living this life that it's not. It's not what it's cracked up to be. Everybody fails. Everybody falls down. Well, it all falls down. You got to just get back up. And so I got back up yesterday and I had to realize, like, I had to take a moment and take a step back and say, you know, I failed today, but how am I going to do better tomorrow? And so yesterday was difficult for me. And I just wanted to share my fall. So I need you to know that you good, we good, everybody's good. And if you fall, just get back up. So yesterday there was a lot that happened in the news. It's a lot that's happening for every day, everywhere. It's super annoying. But one of the things that I am excited for is this like family fun day at Bartlett Yard. And we are having a conversation about Bartlett Yard today. And so we will discuss that during our interview session or segment. But as far as news is concerned, can we please talk about dope Serena Williams? Like, she is so amazing to be one of the first Black women to win points after point. Like, yo, and she's, I don't want to say she old, but for the game and in comparison to other players, like, you know, in football, you only have a certain amount of years. And if you're like 30 in football, you're a veteran, like you're old. And Serena Williams is a veteran in the game. And she just, you know, continuously proven that Black girl magic is a real thing. And so her body is absolutely dope. Her mind is dope. And there was a recent conversation that I was reading online about how, you know, how can she have all of this like contentment and resentment for what's going on in society, but she married a white man. And I'm here for the comments. I'm always here for the comments, right? And so while I'm over there reading the comments, you know, there's a lot of people that are like, you cannot, they use biblical sayings like the mind of the man can't be in two directions at once. Like you can't be good and evil, and you're either one or the other. And if you are for the oppressor, you're against your own people. And so that made me think, like, how many people actually think like that? And what about the rest of us that have like interracial relationships within our family? Like, does that mean I can only love my Black cousin, but I don't have love for their white wife? Like, it just, some of the comments to me were illogical. Like, as far as like trust is concerned, and trusting the institutions that teach my children, trusting these institutions that quote unquote have my best interest at heart, like that's one thing. But when you bring it down to the minimal of like people and individuals, I know some, you know, can I be honest? I can be transparent. I know some white people that are down for the cause more than some Black folks. I know, I need to shout out Chris Conroy, because Chris Conroy is a beast. And if you don't know Chris, like, let me just tell you, Chris is in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. We've done shows with him in the past virtually. Okay, we got children. School is in session. Chris and I have done interviews in the past on financial planning and financial building and generational wealth, because he does like budgeting and stuff like that. And so we've done some work with Chris virtually, not on air as of yet, but dope. Chris is so Chris is married to a Black woman. Yes. But aside from that, he has Black children. Yes. But aside from that, prior to these relationships that he had, like, Chris was one of the ones that grew up where we grew up. Like, he grew up in the hood, second floor, ring the doorbell, don't work, pee in the hallway. Like, that's how Chris grew up. And there's a lot of Caucasians that get the struggle. And when you take a look at like Nat Turner, who snitched? A Black person. Who snitched on Harriet Tubman? A Black person. Like, when you look at the Uncle Toms of the world, And we're gonna have Dr. Tia Martin, who was Boston's chief resilient officer. She was also part of the Rockefeller Foundation 100 Resilient Cities. When we have that conversation, we'll be able to break down and talk to like a PhD, a doctor, about how over the years, Uncle Toms have not all skin folk or kinfolk. We'll just leave it like that. And sometimes some of these white folks have our best interests at heart more than some of our brothers and sisters. And so, as far as that's concerned, I just wanted to take a moment to say, I don't necessarily agree with the whole Serena Williams marrying a white man. How can she have so much anger? How can she have so much contentment for what's going on in society? She shouldn't be able to speak on these things because you married a white man. If you were really concerned, you would have got you a brother. And you know, I'm not sure how you all feel about that. You do know that you can comment. If you are listening online, you guys can also download the app Spark FM Online, the app for Android and or for iPhone, and you're able to live chat. So if you want to live chat, you can do that. And that is on the sparkfmonline.com. And please, I like it when you talk to me. I like it when you give me cookies, but I don't like you all the time. You guys remember that little boy? One of the things that's in the news that it's not really an article that I want to read, but something that I want to talk about. So I want to talk about this whole vaccine. So we have clinical trials when it comes to vaccines and when it comes to COVID-19. And COVID-19 vaccines are looking like there's not enough people of color or melanated folks becoming part of the trials, and I understand why. So when you take a look at the history, and we've briefly spoke about this, and in another day we will go a little bit more in depth, but we have briefly spoke about the injustices that have taken place within the medical system when it comes to research, specifically the Johns Hopkins research, specifically when it comes to anybody of color. They dare not to test on their, Aryan race, but they have no problem testing on Ethiopians and Argentinians and El Salvadorians and Blacks in America, or Native Americans on sovereign soil. So we as a collective have felt like I don't trust the medical system, period. How many grandparents, how many people do you know that do not go to the doctor today because they do not trust the system at all? They don't trust, I don't want no test. I don't want people that have actual diseases that could be cured, but don't want no business in a hospital at all, because of, you go into the hospital perfectly fine and you never return. And so I struggle with this because I understand history. I struggle with this because I understand why we don't trust the institutions that are supposedly to be here to protect us and to help us and to solve these problems of the world. But then I also understand that we need to be tested and we need to be a part of the trials and we need to be there because there's so many medications that don't work for Black people because we were not part of the trials, because we were not part of the research aspect of it. And so I struggle on this line of, do I want for us to be engaged in this process and possibly put us at risk for continued abuse? Or do we advocate for people to engage in this process in order to make the system more equitable when it comes to medications working for us because we know they work because we were part of the trials? And so I know I can't be the only one. I am interested in your thoughts, your feelings. Who else struggles with this? Who else is battling between this? What is that? like a seesaw. Yes, who is battling, going back and forth with the seesaw about how we should move forward. And so please help me, because I really am, like, I'm struggling, because there's opportunities here for us to be engaged and to get like a little stipend. But aside, even with like a little stipend, we don't know the long-term effects. Like half of the drugs that we give our kids, this ADHD, that is Ritalin is crack. Like we give our kids a form of crack, and that's why their heart rates increase. That's why like they don't have no appetite. I really, 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 really struggle with it. And I don't know what to do. So usually I'm like, I have an answer for everything. I don't have an answer. And I'm really skeptical, and it hurts because we as a people are continuously hurt by systems, and we also need to be a part of the process, because it hurts us when all of these medications are in full-fledged availability, but yet they don't work for us. So that's that. In other news, an Arizona officer holds a black man at gunpoint while looking for a white suspect. Ronald Kazaya is under investigation and has been reassigned to administrative role following the incident. This took place in Arizona, Arizona. Police officer is under investigation after he held a black hotel employee at gunpoint while searching for a white suspect. The officer has been reassigned to administrative role following the August 29th incident. Kurzaza is one of the several officers who respond to a call from Hawthorne Suites about a suspect with a gun who taunted an employee. The hotel's manager's description of the suspect included that he was white and would be exiting through a certain door. The video from the officer's body camera shows him going to that door with his gun drawn. When the door opens, however, out steps a black male employee named Trey. So the armed suspect was not located, according to the report. The initial review indicates that the incident was not handled in accordance with the professionalism and respectful behavior that we, the public, have for our officers. And this was from the Temp Police Department statement. Mayor Corey Woods also noted in a statement that while the matter is under investigation and we await the outcome of that examination, from our early review of the body camera footage, the officer's actions were not a demonstration of equality of service or treatment of people that they seek to provide. And so I am excited that we have reached a point in society where we're like, hell nah. We are not going to stand for this. And so when you have City of Boston reallocating funds from the police, so we have, in a sense, defunded the police, and that reallocation of funds has now gone into social workers in order to answer distress calls when it comes to psychological or breakdowns or mental health. And so we as a city are doing amazing things. But when you take a look at, cities like this in Arizona, it's just like, thank you. As a whole, we thank you, because I feel like what's it called? Critical mass. We have reached a critical mass, or at least in certain cities, we have reached a critical mass where people are fed up and they like the status quo is unacceptable. This level of behavior has been made unacceptable. And so I'm glad that this is where we are. I'm disappointed that it took this long for us to get here, because I was watching, what was I watching? Iron Man, the original Iron Man. And I think that came out in like 2008. Iron Man, like when he had shrapnel in him and then he got the like little thing in his heart. And so I'm a beginner. Do not judge me. I'm a beginner to all of this Marvel comic. What's the other one? DC, I'm a newbie. I don't know nothing about this. I didn't read comic books as a kid, so none of this resonates with me. But I do love the technology aspect. And as you may or may not know, my favorite movie in the whole wide world is The Fifth Element. And the reason why is because of all of the technology that's in The Fifth Element. So when I was a little girl, my favorite movie was Total Recall, even though it scared me half to death because the guy had like this thing poking out of him. Like that part was scary to me. But all of this technology and our ability to do all of these things, meet George Jetson. In my head, the Jetsons were like, that's what it's going to be like when I grow up. And the Flintstone is just like, oh, when my mom was a kid. When you're a kid, your brain doesn't like equate a timeline. So you create a timeline. And in my head, the timeline was the Stone Age was literally my mom's childhood. And Go Gadget, Go Gadget, Go. Inspector Gadget was like today, the now, life today. And then the future was the Jetsons. Meet Georgia. So for me, technology is like, this is where we're supposed to be. But when you take a look at, again, history, when you give people too much access to these things, they no longer need you. And so I understand that there is a possibility that all of this technology that currently is being shown in most, if not all, of our television shows and movies, like all of these, when you think about Penny, what was Penny's, Inspector Gadget's niece, Penny something, whatever. When you think Penny had like a whole little thing where she could like call the car and she could like connect to her computer and all of that's us today. When you think of, when I think of Harry Potter and the Sirius Black, when he was just like looking for a prisoner and he's like in the picture, that's a live photo. That's an iPhone live photo, B. Like when you think about this, the magic that we perceive to be magic isn't really magic, but it's real life that exists somewhere. But if we give you guys all of this technology, then you don't need to completely rely on us. And so going back to DC, going back to Marvel, going back to Iron Man, taking a look at all of the technology that was in 2008. Jarvis, did you know it took like yesterday? No, 2 days ago. 2 days ago was the first time that I realized that Jarvis was, who's the man with a citrine in his head? He was the red man, red and blue with the citrine in his head. I never knew that. I never knew that the citrine guy was the same. It was like the physical manifestation of Jarvis. I was this years old. I was this years old. But all of that, to me, like all of that should be here. Like we should be here today. Like the fact that this computer that you guys can see me on is touchscreen. The fact that my computer can like connect to my phone. My phone is literally an entire computer. I can tell Siri to do stuff. Listen, first off, really quickly, I'm not a Siri fan. I'm a Google fan. Siri's dumb as hell in comparison to Google. I said it. I stand by it. I don't care. All of this technology should be real today. Period. And I'm a little disappointed that it's not. Because I really thought that, I don't know. I really thought that we would be a lot further in society. And I do not. Who could we be as a global nation if instead of humanitarian aid in the form of bags of rice and big pots to cook, gumbo in, why do we not build irrigation systems that allows people to fish in the sense of like, don't give me a fish, teach me how to fish. So why instead are we throwing money, millions, billions upon billions of dollars in humanitarian aid when it comes to like African countries, when it comes to South American countries, Central American countries, Middle East? I don't consider that the Middle East. If you look at tectonic plates, that's Northern Africa. But instead of throwing money into the problem, we don't invest money into a solution. And so I always talk about common sense and how common sense isn't that common. But for me, it's a given. It's a given. Like it's simple. We should be creating irrigation systems, wells that give people access to water, fishing poles so they can fish, or maybe not fishing poles, like casting nets so they can fish. It just, I just don't get why we do the things that we do as a global nation when we could. Jacques Francisco is his name, and he's a futurist, and he created these plans. He was on the Larry King live show back in the 70s, and he had all these drawings where you could make detachable cities in the water. So these, creating hydroponic gardens, and me and my pod are attached to the city, but I can also detach my pod and go and travel to another city. Like, this was back in the 70s. Again, if we go back to the 70s when Ford came up with the hemp car, like, we have all of this technology that we could be using, that we could be doing, be a better society globally. But we're like, nah, let's not do that. Let's not use solar energy. Let's dig into the ground, do all of this fracking, mess up our water system. It just, for me, it's frustrating, because these are things that are common sense that we could be making real change in the world. And that reminds me, there's a documentary called Billions in Change. Great documentary. If anything I'm saying right now resonates to you, you will love the documentary Billions in Change. The gentleman who came up with the 5-hour energy drink was making all of this money and had no idea what to do with it. So he used these billions of dollars to create these systems that could possibly change the world. And so one of them was turning dirty water into drinking water. Another one was using like exercising and bikes and lifting weights as a form of creating electricity. I can't think of what the other ones were, but these were like everyday things. And he just throws money into if you have an idea, it's not an idea. Let's throw money into it, see if it works. And if it works, let's implement it. And so those are the type of politicians that I feel like are the ones that we need in positions of power. That's the type of president that we need. Those are the type of senators and congressmen and women that we need. People who are going to see the innovation of tomorrow, to see the T'Challa, Black Panther, to see all of that technology in Black Panther, and how do we implement that into global society? How do we, clean water? How do we implement that into global society? And we keep voting against our best interests. I am not a fan of family legacy politics at all. So the entire belief that I supported Kennedy because he's a Kennedy, and I support Kennedy because he's a legacy, and those were false narratives. The reason why I supported Kennedy is because Ed Markey has been here for how long? I have seen Ed Markey in the city of Boston one time 5 years ago, and he didn't stay at the event to talk to anybody. After he did his little speech, whatever, he got in his car and drove off. Well, actually, he didn't drive. He had a driver. I literally saw Kennedy in the projects be, not once, not twice, but throughout his entire campaign in the projects of Roxbury, in the projects of Dorchester, like straight in the projects with no security. And Markey always has like a little bodyguard by his side. When you take a look at the conversations that Ed Markey, because we did ask a media request for Ed Markey to speak with us. And I didn't care. It didn't have to be in person. We could have did a Zoom call or a StreamYard. We could have did a phone call, like whatever it was. It could have been him and I, and we could have recorded it for you all. It didn't have to be anything. But I put media requests in multiple times throughout the years. And so if you know somebody who supports Ed Markey, if you know somebody in his camp, hi, how you doing? I'm still looking for answers. But when you look at some of the answers to the questions that he was asked, they were real superficial and not really thoughtful. It was like somebody else wrote it out for him and he was regurgitating what someone else said. Versus, I think a lot of the things that Kennedy said were extremely far-fetched and were going to take a few years to implement. For instance, he wanted to, across the board, make it a national thing to take the money from the police department and take those funds and reallocate them to social services. He was like off the top. That's what we all need to do. That doesn't need to be a Boston thing. That doesn't need to be a Massachusetts thing. All police officers, instead of responding to mental health calls, need to have mental health professionals. I was with him on that as a mom of a 2-year-old, and daycare is $17,000 a year. And again, that is for like basement in the hood, somebody's grandmother watching him. Versus, actual real sending your kid to preschool at 2 years old, $45,000 a year. It's expensive. And one of the things Kennedy said was, we, the government, assume responsibility for your child's education once they hit 4 years old up until they're in high school. Now, what you plan to do after high school really has nothing to do with us unless you take a look at Boston, where they're saying if you go to a community college, you can go for free. Right? Not everybody does that. But the United States government as a whole, your 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, depending on what county, state, town you're in, up until 12th grade, assumes the responsibility for education of your child. So why not include the beginning 4 years of that child's life? Why not include, as a newborn, these are the services that you get, like your motor skills, like what have you. All of that. And so I thought that was going to be costly. Absolutely. I thought that was going to cost a lot of money, and not just me a lot of money, but I thought that was going to cost, like, as far as taxpayers are concerned, we definitely there are no things as free lunch, right? But I thought it was a brilliant idea that could be implemented. And there were some other things that were really like, quote unquote, far-fetched or unorthodox. And those are the type of politicians that I want to see in office. But I don't understand. And please, like, respond, call and response. Hit me up with a message. Hit me up with an email. You could do it like inbox and be anonymous. I want to know, why do we continuously vote for MFs that do not care about us, for people who are not working in our best interest, who don't care? I don't understand, and I need help understanding why we do this. Why did you vote for Ed Markey doing the same things over and over again? And I see people, I read the comments, he brought Jazz, the young lady who lost her life. She went to the club. Her and her friend split up. She went home with some dude. He ended up literally chopping her up and putting her in the suitcase. Ed Markey helped her family come from Cape Verde. This is his district. Why wouldn't he? Like that. Yes, I feel like that wasn't like, oh my God, he did something humanitarian. It's like, nah, that was a national news. Your ass wouldn't have been reelected had you not acted. So I can imagine, like, his office was like, yo, there is something you need to do about this. Somebody else was like, he's been here for the Green Deal. Like he helped Cortez go ahead and put together the Green Deal. How is any of that being implemented into his district? When, as a constituent, that Green New Deal that he's like, how has any of that been implemented when it comes to the trees that they're trying to take down from Mount Ayacas? How does that implement as far as like and I did not know like environmental justice was such a huge thing. Like when you take a look at the environmental injustice that takes place in the city of Boston when it comes to like sidewalks or plant life, or not just trees themselves, but greenery or flowers, the environmental justice of like the water in our pipes and what's in our water versus like how the suburbs have clean water and I did not understand how huge environmental injustice was until really this election. If I can be transparent, I was completely ignorant until this election when I had to do my own due diligence and understand some of the language that was taking place specifically around this new Green Deal or Green New Deal. But aside from that, like, that's great. He signed off on it. He co-sponsored it. From what I understand, a co-sponsor is a click. So if you've ever liked something on Instagram, that is like a co-sponsor. So while you're over here, quote unquote, co-sponsoring all of these bills, all you did was click a damn like. But when we, the people, don't understand the intricacies of politics, we start lifting these people up for doing what they're supposed to do. Oh my God, I'm so proud of you. Shout out to my cousin Kamal. We don't applaud fish for swimming. We don't applaud birds for flying. We don't do that. I really wanted Kennedy to win. Like I wanted change. I wanted something different. I wanted a politician that wasn't afraid to be in the hood without a bodyguard and to actually talk to real people. And when people like, I seen women crying to Kennedy about like, these are the situations that are taking place. This is what's going on. I called Ed Markey about this. I called his office about that. I want something different. I'm ready for some change. And for him to be there and not just be there and engage, but actually emotionally be in tune with what this woman was saying. Like, it's a different type of feeling when you get a human being who what I was going to say was going to be a fallacy and a complete lie, because Kennedy actually has over $100 million in the bank. And so I was going to say, for somebody who understands the plight of the poor, I'm not quite sure he does understand the plight of the poor in other than the empathetic plight. But at the same token, Ed Markey has over $50 million too. So we're really talking about two rich white men, battling over. It's not a battle. He already won. So I should just be quiet now. Arbitrator orders a New Hampshire officer fired for racist text to be reinstated. And this is right above our head, you guys. This is in New Hampshire. One of the biggest issues facing meaningful police reform is the arbitration process. An officer could be fired for being a piece of but an arbitrator could say, well, he isn't that bad, and order the officer to be rehired. In New Hampshire, that's exactly what happened. CNN reports that a Manchester police officer, Carlo Capiano, is refusing an arbitrator's order to reinstate former officer Aaron Brown. In 2018, the Manchester Police Department launched an investigation into Brown after receiving a complaint and found he had sent text messages that included extremely disturbing racist remarks, and others which he claimed to have intentionally damaged property while executing search warrants. While a criminal investigation didn't have enough evidence to charge him with property damage, The racist texts were enough to get Brown fired back in April of 2018. When the investigation concluded, the Manchester Police Patrolmen's Association filed a grievance over Brown's firing, and an arbitration hearing was set in August of last year. The arbitrator did not find enough evidence that Brown had intentionally damaged property, a statement said from the department. However, the arbitrator ruled that Brown's racist comments were egregious and had no place in law enforcement, and that the Manchester Police Department had properly applied zero tolerance approach to the racist conduct. The Manchester police statement also said, nevertheless, the arbitrator determined that Brown should not have been fired, but rather simply suspended for 30 days. The ruling called for Brown to receive his job back with back pay minus 30 days suspension. I would like to pause here for a moment, because this is the point in which we need to ask, who are the arbitrators, who sit in the seat? And if you thought that all of these racist text messages only needed a 30-day slap on the wrist without no pay, I need to know what's going on in your text messages. I need to know what's coming out of your mouth. Because if you think this is acceptable, that in there lies the problem. Also in the statement, once the case goes to an arbitrator, it is binding. Even though they are forced to follow the arbitrator's decision, Manchester Police Chief Carlo Capuano is refusing to reinstate Brown. Yo, you know what? Let me see if I can get John to get us Capuano. I have a friend. I feel so special. I could say that I have a friend that was once a police chief. We're going to do this real time, baby. Real time. Is John in a meeting right now? I don't know. This is real. This is real life, real time. What is today? Oh, John's in a meeting right now with DYS. Okay, never mind. We will call John back. Well, John will call us back because he's dope like that. Please text me. Real time. Does he have voicemail? Voice thing? That's one of the things I do like about iPhone. iPhone let you talk to somebody. What's up, Akil? Shout out to all the veterans. I love the vets. Mwah. John, I am currently reading a story on police chief in Manchester. His name is Carlo Capano. Could you please get us a meeting with him? Because I would like to discuss. Get us a meeting, real time. I want Carlo on the line today or tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's Freaky Friday, so maybe on Monday. Like, I want to talk about his his ethics, because clearly Carlo needs to be the arbitrator and the arbitrator needs to be fired. But since we don't have any control from here, I'm wondering who, and John said probably. So we are going to work on that. I got a friend who got a friend. I'm excited for that. In other news, Dallas's first black female police chief steps down after protest backlash. Listen, black people, stop calling for the resignation of those that actually have our interests at heart. This goes right back like a typewriter. This goes right back to voting for our best interest. We be so mad and so emotional in that moment, not understanding that the people that are on our side are working as hard as they can. And you're going to go ahead and have Renee Hall, the first black woman to lead the Dallas police force, submit her resignation. And you're going to have, what's his name? What's the damn arbitrator's name? We're going to have the damn arbitrator as the next police chief of Dallas. Okaying for all these police officers to shoot them up, kill. Renee Hall, the first black woman to lead the Dallas police force, submitted her resignation, becoming the latest in a string of commanding officers across the nation who stepped down from their posts after months of protests against police brutality. Hall is 49 years old. She turned in her resignation letter, which didn't give a reason for stepping down, but did explain that she planned on staying on through the end of the year. In recent months, she, like many others, has faced criticism for how their department dealt with protests sparked with the George Floyd case. A Black man who died while in police custody in May after the white Minneapolis police officer pressed his knee on his neck for almost 9 minutes. Hall reportedly wrote in her resignation letter that while Dallas police have dealt with an unthinkable series of events in the time since she took office in 2007, she remains proud of the 3,000 officers the department has both coped and implemented critical reforms with. And so the thing that's disheartening about this is we have mainstream media, we have literally the president attacking these mayors, attacking these police chiefs as like democratic. If the Democrats are rats, then what are the Republicans? But democratic cities and towns are not, basically, they're not doing what very fine people would do. And very fine people would not, what did he say initially? You don't have to be nice when you put your hand on the head. Basically, he wants y'all to shoot him up, kill. The same thing that he did to the protesters when he wanted to hold the Bible upside down is the same thing he wants the police department to do to all of the damn protesters. It's illegal. But this is our president. This is America. I hate it. I really hate it here. I really do hate it here. There was a video of a gentleman, I think it was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and somebody was like, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And he was like, yo, go find another country. Don't do that here. That be the like, make America great again ideology. Like, go find another country, baby. Are you Native American? No? Okay. Go find another country. Like, can the Native Americans please stand up? Can y'all please stand up and remind these Europeans of where they really belong? In Europe. In the Caucasus Caves. Like, can you please stand up and have a voice? I don't understand. So there are a few, Yonazda. Let me see if we can get Yonazda in the building, because Yonazda is one of the Native Americans that go hard for her people. And so I definitely want to have a conversation with her because is it Ya or Yo? Yonazda, huh? Yeah, here it is. So she's one of the people that go hard for her people, but I don't understand why Native Americans have not Shady Slim, please stand up and really tell people about themselves. Like, for me, it makes no sense why you have the audacity, what Amanda Seales say, the caucasity to think that this is not your land. This is not you. And so what I would like to see is for more Native Americans to remind these Make America Great Again, what America truly, like when America was great and I could travel from New York to California without having to be shot by the police. That's when America was great again. When we sipped on peyote and convened with our ancestors, that's when America was great. And it wasn't called America. I don't know what it was called prior to being in America, but shout out to Americano. Como says New York can reopen indoor dining at 25% capacity. New York restaurants can resume indoor dining. Can I tell you a really quick story? So when Anari was little, clearly dyslexia is like genetic, because we had the TV that had the tape and the CD. So you could put your VHS or you could use your DVD. And whenever it would pause, he was like, Mommy, can you remuse it? Can you remuse it? I'm like, what is remuse? He was like, it says remuse. And it was resume. And I thought, like, to this day, and I'm already 17 years old, to this day, that like those are the things that I remember. And if you are a new parent, my grandmother told me to do this and I never did it. And I regret it to this day, but it's something that I do now with baby Rain, to record like all of the things that they say. Like Asaria used to say lopes. It's soap and lotion. She was like, Mommy, I did my lopes, but it was like she was washing her body with soap or she was putting on lotion. And to write down everything they say. But with baby Rain, I just document it on camera because that's where we are in society. But restaurants can't resume remuse indoor dining at the end of the month, but with certain restrictions. It was said on Wednesday, yesterday, September 9th, that 6-month ban on indoor dining will be lifted on September 30th, allowing eateries to offer seating at 25% capacity. And I wonder, one of the things that I wonder is like at 25% capacity indoor seating with winter coming soon, winter is coming. What does that look like financially? How many businesses are going to or have already had to file like some type of bankruptcy or grievance, or like taxes this year is going to be crazy because how many businesses are going to claim a loss? Like almost every bit, unless you're Jeff Bezos or Tesla. I don't even know how people are buying Teslas at this time. But like how many people are losing money? One of the things that I've noticed, and I want to shout out Owens. It's not Gary Owens. He was with the Ujima project. I can't think of it right now, but he was doing a presentation and he gave the statistics on the 2008 crash of the market and the resilience of Black people that have lifted themselves up from that crash, and how many Black businesses, entrepreneurs thrived after the crash of 2008. And he also predicted a huge influx of Black-owned businesses. Because you want to know something? We are seeds, baby. We are seeds. When you bury us deep in the ground and we cry our river, that ain't nothing but watering for our glow up. I'm excited. We are coming to the top of the hour. We have a couple more minutes before the 12 o'clock hour, but I just want to make sure that our guest is okay. So give me a moment to check in with him, and we will be right back. I am Tayla Andre. You are tuned in to Wake Up with Tayla Andre, Monday through Friday, Motivational Monday, all the way through Freaky Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. We're going to take this quick break, and when we return, we are going to discuss Bartlett Yard. We're going to discuss what's going on as far as just all of the building that is taking place in the city of Boston. We're going to specifically talk about Boston because we're talking with the BPDD, the BRA, the Black Removal Authority. We're going to speak with them. But for those that are listening internationally, please share with us, how is the glow up going up in your city that's not taking place in your hood, but your waterfront is popping? Billions of dollars. So let's talk about that. I was going to give you a call-in number, but since we can't, you could just go ahead and hit me up on TAYLAANDRE, everything Tayla Andre. We'll be right back. That was for radio. We aren't going anywhere. But I am going to still check on David and make sure he's good. Well, David has 5 minutes, so we'll give him a minute. Ooh. For those that are tuned in online, we are currently on hold for a minute. I'm going to make sure that David, our guest, is good to go. For those that are listening on radio, we have just music playing. They can't hear us right now. And I am in David's Zoom link. He sent me a Zoom, but I need him to come into our room. So let me copy this again. I have mad mucus right now. I'm trying to figure out why. Because I haven't been eating like dairy. I haven't been drinking. Well, I don't drink milk, but I haven't been eating cheese. I don't know why I have all this mucus in my throat. David, where you at? It's 2 more minutes. And John said for us to send him the link to the story. New Hampshire police chief. No, New Hampshire police reinstate. Here it is. Let's go ahead and send this to John because he's going to hook us up and get us the police chief on the line so we can talk about arbitration. We could talk about what's going on in New Hampshire. And we actually should get John in the building at the same time. That would be dope. Akil, if you're still watching, I love you, my love. Okay, so we have literally 1 minute. David is not in here. David, where you at? Exactly. Where you at, David? Where you at? It's 12 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock on the dot. I'm in my drop top, cruising the streets. Boing, 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 boing. Come on, David. Come on. I'm here. I got a real pretty little thing that's waiting for me. I pulled up. David's still in here, boo. David Price is the host now. Hi, David. How are you? Can you head over to, I just sent a link. Can you click that link so we can connect you on StreamYard? Nope, not yet. I don't see you. No worries. Yes, that's exactly what you want to do. Are those books or are those records behind you? No worries. No worries. We're here. We're here. There's David. Hey. We can't see your face though. You might have to close Zoom in order for it to see. Okay. No worries. I'll see you in StreamYard. Ah. You ready? You ready?
Can see me? Yes.
Hi, David. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Yes. And I hope that I can share the screen so I can go through the presentation.
You.
Can you hear me?
Hold on. That might be my fault.
Can you hear me?
Oh, David, sing the ABCs for me.
A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P.
I got you. I got you. Thank you. Thank you. So
Okay.
we're gonna go ahead and record. Good
Yes.
rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Tayla Andre. Waking up with Tayla Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. We got David Price in the building with us today. Well, not really in the building, but he is here with us. He is the executive director of Nuestra Comunidad. I said that correctly?
Pretty close. Nuestra comunidad, our community in Spanish.
Our community. Do you speak Spanish, David?
Poquitísimo.
Oh,
Mi esposa es una boricua, nació en Vega Baja, Puerto Rico. I'm married into a Puerto Rican family, and I've picked up a lot of Spanish by family osmosis.
I got you. I got you. So David, what I would like for us to do, so we're gonna be speaking about Bartlett Yard, but I'd like to like rewind a little bit, like take it back to the typewriter, bring it back. What was Bartlett Yard once upon a time?
Oh, so let me give you the thumbnail. It started as a mass transit use in the late 19th century when the first rail car operated on Washington Street. It was horse-drawn, and the transit company needed land to store the horses and their hay overnight. And because of fire hazards, they needed a lot of land. So they bought the land at what's now Bartlett Yard. And then at the turn of the century, there was the elevated Orange Line on Washington Street, and they built an elevated exit for repairs. And then a decade later, it became a bus yard also. So for most of the 20th century, it was an MBTA bus storage and maintenance yard. Shut down in the 90s because of youth organizing in Roxbury. I think it was the beginnings of what's now ACE, Alternatives for Community Environment. They were concerned about high asthma rates in the neighborhood, and buses by law could only idle for 5 minutes, but they documented buses idling for hours in the morning and connected that to asthma and respiratory illnesses. So they protested, organized, advocated, and they got the T to shut it down. They moved the repair operations to Forest Hills, if you know that big MBTA facility right as you approach Forest Hills coming from Roxbury. And then it was vacant. Shut down around 94. The city. So that's the answer to what it was before. Okay.
And so right before you came on air, we were talking about environmental inequities. And so you actually named some environmental inequities by the buses idling for long periods of time.
Yeah.
So it was once upon a time where the hay was stored. Then it became where the upper orange line convened. And then it was a bus station stop yard.
For maintenance and repairs, yes.
And now it is being turned into a everything space. So like commercial space, housing, entertainment, elders, like a little bit of everything. As you know, or some of you may not know, I am one of the newer members of the Bartlett Yard community review. Not really, but we're just going to inform you board. Is that, I don't know. I don't even know how to call it. Cause it's like, we're not asking your permission for anything. We're just letting you know that this is what we're doing.
Okay. Well, this is an unusual project review committee or a PRC. For most projects, they're very short-lived because there's like a couple of months of review and the PRC makes a recommendation about to support zoning or not. And then it's all done. Then the building is built or not built. But because Bartlett it's 8 acres, is actually, I think, 10 separate buildings. So the PRC has had a much longer lifespan than typical. And you're coming in, in kind of year 10. And a lot of decisions have been made. And there's maybe 2 buildings that are under review now, but there'll be more coming next year. And I think, the BPDA runs that whole process. So I can't speak for the BPDA, but my understanding is the PRC has a real voice and an opinion on whether zoning approval should be granted or not. And our job is to get buy-in among PRC members and the broader community for the vision and the specific buildings at Bartlett.
Okay. So right now there are 2 buildings on Bartlett Yard.
Yes.
And we're looking forward to 8 more.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So my first question is, these 2 buildings, why was it so quickly that these 2 buildings were able, well, not quickly, like it's been 10 years, but in recent, these 2 buildings were able to be erected. And I know commercial space is not up and running yet because of like COVID being one of the reasons, but why are these 2 buildings erected, but the other 8 are just kind of in limbo?
Well, a couple of answers. One is this is an 8-acre site. It was intended to be in phases, and it's difficult for any developer, even a big developer, to have the resources to build out a site of this size all at once. And for folks who may know about Olmsted Green, or I think it's called Harvard Commons in Mattapan, those are also large. They've been phased over the past 10 years. I think they're still under development. So it's not unusual for a large project like this to be done in phases. But at the beginning, we had a third partner. Right now, it's Nuestra and Wendale Developers, which is a Black and Asian-owned firm that's been in Roxbury for over 30 years. We're 50-50 partners, but we had Bank of America as our third partner back when we were designated in 2008, and they have deep pockets, and they were with them as a partner. They could provide the financing to build it out much faster than has been the case. They got cold feet when the Great Recession happened, and kind of all over the country, they backed out of deals that were on big vacant parcels because they felt it was too risky. Western and Wendale did not back out because we wanted to honor our commitment to the community and we figured we could use the recession to get a lot of pre-development work done and start the construction after the recession, which is what's happened. So that's why these two buildings we were able to finance as one phase, and then there are a couple more buildings that are going to be approved soon, and we'll start construction next year.
Mm-hmm. I was going to stop you as soon as you said Bank of America. I was like, oh, that explains everything. They're the worst in the world.
Right. So it's really been challenging because Wendale and Wester, we're small community-based developers, and Wendale, it's minority owned. We're community controlled. Nobody owns New Wester, but we keep all the profits and the assets in the community, and it's been a struggle. And I think most folks who've been involved for a long time have seen that. Because we don't have the deep pockets that some developers do. Certainly, that Bank of America does.
Mm-hmm. Have you thought about partnership with cruise company?
Well, we've thought about partnerships with a wide net set of developers, and our priority has been community-based developers, and we've approached I think at least a dozen to talk about partnering on different parts of Bartlett. I think Cruise was approached about one opportunity. They felt the time wasn't right for them. I think it's because they're about to start construction on Warren up across the Mall of Roxbury, Washington Park Mall, and they're hoping to start soon right at Nubian Square at 135 Dudley. They have a big project, so the timing wasn't right for this opportunity. We approached them about probably a month ago or 2 months ago, but we have spoken to other community developers. As I think POA is a local nonprofit who's doing a senior building. That's one partnership we have.
Mm-hmm.
We've partnered with
that a little bit before we talk about the other partnerships. Can we talk about the senior building? And I'm looking at 135 Dudley, so over there by the library.
Yeah, that's a Cruise project.
Okay.
Right? I can't speak for Cruise, but
no worries.
They've got a lot on their plate, and that's great. They're doing two great projects.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely right in Roxbury.
Yes.
And so one of the conversations that I sat in, we're talking about the elderly community that is the building for the elders. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because for me, I love my elders. I am like, those are my favorite people. And I was really not only just surprised, but excited when we started beginning to speak about the Elders Project. And so I'd like for you to just inform community on what that means.
Sure. So there was always a plan to have a senior building as part of Bartlett to make sure we met that need for senior housing for local families. So New Wester owns one senior building, but we felt like to provide the best senior housing, we wanted to partner with a more experienced owner and manager of senior housing, especially for low-income folks. So we reached out to Preservation of Affordable Housing, or POA. We actually reached out to other groups too, but there are not a lot of developers who do a lot of senior housing. So they not only know how to finance it and build it, but manage it with good services that's really based on what residents say they need. And POA has done development in Roxbury. They're doing the Whittier Choice redevelopment, down at the BHA Whittier development right now. So this is going to be 50 units of senior housing. And so folks can age in place and with services built in. And I think it's mostly one bedrooms. There are 4 2-bedrooms. And I think it's 89% affordable. I think there are 5 or 6 market rate units, but the others are all based on income, kind of on a sliding scale, I guess, from very low income up to what so-called 60% of area median income, which is the sort of the standard technical term for low income.
And so for those who don't know, Boston's area median income is $92,000. So 60% of $92,000 is like up to, like, that's the range that people would be making, is like your SSI or your retirement wouldn't be able to make over 60% of 90, that what is that, like
Well,
60,000?
it's probably more like 50. It's probably more like 55. And for a household of one or two, it's lower. The bigger
Mm-hmm.
your household is, the bigger your income, AMI income is. So as for a senior of one or two people, it's probably more like 50,000 would be
Mm-hmm.
60% of AMI. So that could be two people on Social Security or one person, because it can range from zero up to that amount.
Mm-hmm.
So call it 55,000.
I'm sorry. You said age in place. What does age in place mean?
Well, I think the idea is to have services so that as you grow older and you have more medical needs or other behavioral other needs, that they can be provided in your housing, or you can get to them easily, so you don't have to go to a nursing home. Um, and I know, because I think it's hard for a senior to make that transition and spend the end of their life in a nursing home. It's hard for the family. So sometimes it takes them out of the community, away from their networks. And we want people to be able to age in place, not just in their own apartment, but in their own neighborhood, where all their relationships are centered. And I can speak to this personally. I don't want to get, you know, too dramatic, but my mother-in-law passed away about 48 hours ago. She lived in the senior building in Nubian Square at Central Boston Elder Services. She'd been there for about a decade, and it was a blessing that she was able to do that. And she passed with her family there. It wasn't COVID, and it made me realize aging in place includes dying in place in a really dignified way, with family and neighbors supporting you all the way. And that's sort of, sometimes you don't think about that, but that's ultimately what aging in place means, is to really finish the final phase of your life with lots of support from your neighbors, family, service providers, in your building and in your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. That is beautiful. So my condolences to you and your wife and your family.
Thank you.
But that is actually a beautiful story.
Yeah.
I as well have my great grandmother aged in place and
Mhm.
at home, and so I
Yeah.
do know and understand the difference between having to visit a family member in the nursing home, that it feels stale and
Yeah.
unloved once you walk through those doors, versus being able to go in the room that they've lived in and
Exactly.
feel comfortable in. And so that is something that I have to say that I was ignorant on. And I can imagine most of the viewers, listeners, is something that they haven't thought about either, especially with our parents getting older and being mindful of that transition, that we as children will be taking on that responsibility.
Yes.
Um, so I'm thinking about elders again. Is there going to be, as far as services, like a pharmacy downstairs, so they wouldn't, I know from Bartlett Yard to Walgreens isn't that far, but
Right.
it like if you shuffle, that's like a 26-mile walk if you do the elder
Right.
shuffle.
Right. Right. No, there's not going to be a pharmacy in the building. I think there's not enough room, and we didn't think it was the right. Most pharmacies really want to have a drive-through if they're going to open up a new location, and we just didn't think that made neighbors really didn't think that made sense to have that much traffic. But these days, you can, especially with the pandemic, you can get your prescriptions delivered. But the pharmacy will do delivery, or by mail, um, and I think the part of the services would be to provide easy access to your medications for folks who can't go to the pharmacy. Although for some seniors, that's part of their day out. That's part of a go to the post office, go to the pharmacy, and talk to everybody you see along the way. But if they can't make that trip, I'm sure it'll be easy to arrange for medications to be delivered.
So I said this in the meeting and I stand by it still. I think some of the best educators and nurturers are those that have lived their long life.
Yeah.
And so I know it was just like, that's a good idea, but like we're too far in this phase to consider it. But I still want a daycare ran by elders. Like I still want there to be childcare services from Granny, who is 82 years old that is gonna make sure the baby gonna be whooped with a switch. Like I still, I still would like to see that if possible, somewhere on site.
Well, think about that. We already have an agreement with a daycare program called Roxbury Roots Montessori.
It's a Montessori school that starts at 3.8. I'm already there.
Okay, and I haven't talked to them about this, but having seniors living, you know, a, a stone's throw away could be a resource for daycare in terms of interaction, learning, activities together, indoors or outdoors. I'm sure they'll work out some relationship with the senior building that's like 100 yards away.
David, I would like that to be implemented.
Okay, I'll pass that on.
So other buildings. So that's one of
Sure.
the other 8 that are going to be built. What
Yep.
are the other 7?
Well, the second one that's needs approval now by wrapping up your committee's review and then getting the BPDA is another apartment building on Washington Street. It's called Building A. By the way, we're going to name these buildings after historic folks in the community, and there's a process to do that. So we call them Building A, for example, for now, but there'll be a process. Just as an example, we did a process on Blue Hill Avenue and came up with the Thomas Atkins apartments and with the L&S Jackson apartments, which is the senior building. So we'll do a similar process to try and connect the building with an important historic person or a cultural theme, so to speak. But
I don't know where the Mel King building is. Where's the Mel King?
Well, we'll talk. We'll have a discussion about that. But there's people have mentioned, Chuck Turner.
Yeah.
There are a number of folks who could be recognized, and some people say, well, why does it have to be someone with one of our more experienced community members? Could be a younger person who's done something too. So we'll have a whole discussion about that. So the building A is going to be 5 stories. It's the same kind of size, so to speak, as the existing one on Washington. 5 stories. It's got the same number of apartments, 60 apartments. It also has retail on the first floor. So when that's built, it'll kind of finish the streetscape on Washington Street. So you're not looking at 8 acres of vacant asphalt, which is what you were looking at before, but there'll be buildings with people and wide sidewalks. There'll be outdoor seating and dining and activities right on Washington Street. You'll see some of that as these stores open in the existing building, but this will complete the build out of what you would call the urban streetscape on Washington Street. So that, and I think the neighborhood's idea is as you walk from Nubian Square that, as you know, for years it's been vacant lots. There's the new police station and the old Hurley Wire and Cable, but everything else has been vacant lots. And now Clayton Turnbull built his little apartment building with the Dunkin' Donuts on Washington. There's a home ownership development going up next to that. So as you build out the street, it's going to feel more like a neighborhood and not a series of vacant lots as you walk. There'll be people, there'll be eyes on the street, there'll be stores, and it'll have a completely different feel. Be kind of more like the old days before all the urban renewal and buildings were demolished. And the idea is to have Roxbury folks in those buildings so that the old days means, the legacy communities that are here can start to grow instead of shrink.
That is actually a perfect segue into my next question as far as how is the process going to assure that Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan community members have first preference to these apartments?
Yeah, that is a really good point, because the general rules that we have to follow for affordable housing, or for really everyone has to follow the city's fair housing laws and regulations. So and they require that we have a lottery when we have affordable rental or home ownerships, that we can't, until recently, we couldn't set aside any housing for people from the immediate neighborhood. Now the city has a new policy where you can request to have a set aside for the neighborhood. Um, it's maybe to back up a little. We always try and market to spread the word so that the lottery pool has a lot of folks from Roxbury, so that the percentages are that a lot of Roxbury people will end up in the buildings, and that generally tends to work. But a set aside would be much better. Um, and there's a really good argument for that, not just because it's a nice thing, but folks in Roxbury were denied housing opportunities by redlining. There was like intentional discrimination against the whole community and Black folks who wanted to borrow money to buy a home. They couldn't get a loan in Roxbury. And if they wanted to move to the suburbs, there were racial covenants. They couldn't. So there's a really good argument, we think, to have that set aside to redress some of that injury that was done by redlining and urban renewal. Um, and I think that's why the city is doing this, but we haven't heard whether they're going to approve it or not for the new buildings at Bartlett.
How can we, the people, help you push that initiative?
For local preference?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm really glad you asked that. One of the things we're doing is to try and strengthen the argument as to why there should be a stronger local preference. That we're raising some money now to try and start an oral history project to collect family histories about what happened when redlining and urban renewal and blockbusting. If folks remember the Beberg program that did blockbusting in Roxbury and Mattapan, and to really, because I think that's what is going to generate support for neighborhood set aside, is hearing from people what happened to them or their parents or grandparents or uncles over the years in Roxbury that denied opportunity, a particular opportunity to own a home, but could be even an opportunity to stay in the neighborhood. So we're going to really reach out not only to families that are still here, but families who may have been displaced and get those stories. You'll hear more about that going into 2021. Mm-hmm. But if you helping to spread the word for local families who have those stories, to share them, that we want to document it and use that to go advocate for more resources for the families who were harmed by redlining.
And is there any space as of now for people to send inquiries or send their stories, or just like, I want to be in contact when this project takes place?
There's not now. We hope to create that. We're going to hire someone from the community to manage this, who will be collecting all that. I mean, in the meantime, you go to the Nuestra website and sign up for our newsletter. You'll hear about it. It's www.nuestracdc.org, nuestracdc.org. We'll let everyone know in our newsletter and else our social media or on Twitter and Facebook. But if people send you stories, you can forward them, or if they can reach us on our website, they can send them to us, or just let us know they'd like to be part of that outreach effort.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that is currently, you can see that below, nuestracdc.org.
That's right.
Head over there and put your email in so you can be updated. And so you guys actually own a couple buildings on Dudley Street, one of them being the one directly next to Dudley Station. And you guys play like nursery rhymes throughout the day on that front entrance. I noticed. I take my son there for walks daily, and I was just like, hold on, is this Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? Like,
yeah.
The jazz version?
Do you want to know what's up with that?
Yes, I do.
So to back up a little bit, I think if you live in Roxbury, Nubian Square has been impacted by the opioid crisis in the past few years, and we think it traces back to when the Long Island shelters closed down in 2015. In fact, we documented police crime data for certain crimes from 2015 to 2020, and we looked at Nubian Square, all of Roxbury, and all of Boston. And for all of Boston and Roxbury, those numbers went down, but for Nubian Square, each year they went up. And if you go through, you can see, unfortunately, a lot of negative activity in public parking lots, sidewalks, and we've had people aggressively trying to trespass inside that building, the Dartmouth Hotel, to drug use in the stairways. And we've spent a lot of money on security. It's been a struggle, and we've worked with partners to try and do improvements to bring more positive activity around Nubian Square. We've lobbied the city to do more outreach for drug addiction and mental health. We don't believe we should arrest folks and try to get rid of the problem that way, because they're people. They're not a problem. They're human beings. We want the right kind of services, but we also need to have a neighborhood that's welcoming to folks who live there, who work there, who want to shop there, and businesses desperately want that. So the music you hear is one thing we tried, which seemed to be successful. There was a lot of loitering outside the main entrance. People were selling loose cigarettes and other things on the street. The gypsy cabs were there. They were mixed up in some of that, and people were trying to follow tenants inside the building there. And we found that playing that music it actually just, we'd heard other cities and other places have tried that, and it seemed to work. That the huge loitering in front of that main entrance kind of dissipated when we put the speakers out there. And I didn't think it would work myself, but we decided to give it a try, and it seemed to work.
Well, I thoroughly enjoy it as a mom.
Okay.
And the fact that it's nursery rhymes. Like, I don't know who's behind the playlist, but I noticed all of them were on Sesame Street at one time.
Okay, good to know.
As far as the work so I am a huge Reggie B fan. And so I am familiar with Reggie B and some of the work that he's done with you all traveling amongst the country and just getting like best practices as far as apartment complexes or just like urban living is concerned. And so I'm interested in knowing like what was the start of that? Like, who said, let's take our residents and make them leadership? Like, let's take our residents and educate them on process and have them just be more than just residents. But like,
Right.
How did that, like, what is the program? How did that program start? And how do you find these residents, or how do these residents find you?
Sure. So when Nuestra was formed back in 1981, the mission statement included, it talked about the revitalization of Roxbury through a community-driven process of building up wealth and economic opportunity. And so we've tried to take that community-driven part seriously over the years. And although I've only been around 8 years, but this started before my time. But we've tried to create leadership training opportunities for residents in our properties who want to be more involved in what's going on, not just in their building, but the neighborhood. And a great resource for us is a national group called NeighborWorks America. But Nuestra is one of about 250 organizations who are part of this network. And they have these national trainings 3 or 4 times a year for a week in different cities. Of course, during the pandemic, that's been put on hold. But one of the programs they run is called a Community Leadership Institute with a 3-day curriculum. And Reggie B, who you're talking about, has been to that. He's recruited other tenants in our properties to attend that. He's gotten involved in local groups that we help sponsor. Like there's a male engagement network that advocates for men of color for support services, parenting, counseling, dealing with Corey, holding resource fairs, and he's been active in that men group in Nubian Square, for example. And he's helped recruit other folks who have gone to these leadership trainings and have gotten active in leadership roles in different groups around Roxbury.
So I'm not a tenant, but I'd like to sign up.
You can, and you don't have to be a tenant. We work with neighbors. I know folks know Kenny Grubbs, who's one of the B2 community service officers. He's come to some of these community leadership institutes because he's worked with, he works with a lot of neighbors on basketball tournaments, cookouts, youth programs, and so that's one example. I think Marie Miller, also a local police officer, has done that. But other neighbor homeowners and tenants who don't live in our properties or didn't buy their home from Nuestra, they've participated also. So maybe when the pandemic's over, there's a vaccine, and next year we could you connected to one of these training opportunities at through NeighborWorks America.
Yes, please. I would like to be part of that. So I have to apologize because I was under the impression, like I ignorantly thought there was like some sort of partnership here with BRA, who I have and many of the community members call the Black Removal Authority. I don't care how many times you change your name, it's still the club that got shut up. So you're still the Black Removal Authority. And so with I want to apologize to the listeners and to the viewers because I was under the impression like there was a partnership there that would allow us to speak about some of the movements the BRA has made over the years. And so there is not. That partnership does not exist. But I would like, David, if you can, or feel comfortable, like the changes that have been made in Boston over the last, we don't even have to say 10 years. We could say the last 5 years, the changes that have been made, like how can we, with you being as community involved as you are, how can we as community, like the fact that the waterfront has received billions of dollars, like Seaport has received so much money and has completely altered anyone who went to Seaport 3 years ago. You know what, David? Not even last year. Seaport has changed drastically over the last 305 days. And I'm just wondering, like, what is it that we can do? Like, how do we say, why can't Roxbury receive the same amount of funding, receive the same amount of attention? Like, what is so special about Seaport that they receive these billions of dollars that Roxbury is still over here struggling to get rid of?
Good question. I think it goes beyond the BPDA or it used to be the BRA. And I'm no expert on the Seaport, but I know sort of the market has invested a lot in these big office buildings and condo buildings, apartment buildings. But also the city and state have invested a lot in the convention center and other kinds of public investments. And I know recently there's been some progress in requiring all of those developers to have on their team as in a contracting role or an ownership role, MBE companies. And I think I understand that the convention center expansion has done a much better job on that. So I really don't know much about the Seaport. But in Roxbury, I think we should look at the same sources of money, but be careful because the market is starting to invest in Roxbury, and that might be good. It might not be good. We're seeing private investment buildings. There's one on if you know the corner of Warren and not Palmer, but right where the T-Mobile store is. There's a private condo building going up, and so in a way, it's good that private investors now want to develop in Roxbury. There's a little market rate building on 7 Roxbury Street, the same block as the city, so around the corner from Silver Slipper. That's a good thing. Clayton Turnbull's building is a good thing. But you also run the risk that there'll be so much private investment that it'll overwhelm Roxbury with newcomers. And that's the fear about gentrification. So I think we want to welcome some new investment, but make sure there's plenty of opportunities so Black and Latinx folks who are here can stay. And that's where the community developers come in, because I know Cruz wants to do that. Nuestra wants to do that. Other community-oriented developers, our partners, Wendell, that's what they want to do. I think we want to get as much vacant property under development by community-oriented developers who are going to fight to put local folks in, whether it's home ownership or rental apartments, to prevent displacement. And I think we're going to need a lot of affordable housing to do that. We need market rate for local folks too, because we believe in wealth creation and we want middle class folks to be able to stay and not get priced out. But there's still a lot of, folks who may have jobs, but they may be below 50,000 a year income, and they're at risk of getting pushed out. So it's going to be a real fight as the outside market comes in, we want to have community-oriented developers building to help people stay. And because we don't want to turn into the South End, where you've got a lot of folks at the upper end, and then you've got the folks in the affordable housing that was built, and no one really in the middle. We want to have a strong middle class in Roxbury, and keep low income folks here, and welcome newcomers also. But it's got to be in a way that protects the legacy communities here.
Ashe. And so I have one more question before we circle back to Bartlett Yard. And so really it's not a question, it's a statement. So one of the things that I would like to see with all of the community engagement that you all do is as far as some of the land that is vacant right now, I would love to see some sort of partnership or course or class, or like come in, and if you have this pre-approval to buy a house in this amount of money, let us show you how to use that to build a home. And so I see like a lot of the RFPs that go out, or a lot of when the land becomes available, it's all of like these private investors or a CDC. But what about the people who are from Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, who want to live in this area, but don't, there's land that they could build a 3-4 family. They have the funding for it, but they're not a huge company. They're not a huge corporation. They are not a developer. They want to build Roxbury and use the funds that they do have to build Roxbury. I haven't seen, and I don't know if it exists. If it does, please educate me. But not really like a program, but something to show residents of Boston how to sort of do what the CDC is doing, and that's buying the land, building on the land, and making housing for the community. And there's plenty of like Bostonians that I've spoken to that's just like, Tayla, can you like walk me through the process of like buying this vacant lot? And I'm like, baby, that's not what I do. I personally cannot, but I would definitely love to see some type of education for residents.
Good question. And I think it's hard to do, but it's possible. So we in recent years in Western, we build more multifamily housing, build bigger developments on like places like Bartlett. We've bought vacant lots in the past, starting in the 80s. We started building home ownership in the 80s. 1 family, 2 family, sometimes 4 homes on a lot, and have done some of that recently. And most of that land we got from the city. Now the city still does own scattered site vacant lots that they put out to bid, and some of them are for local. They try to set aside for local folks, not big developers. Even as big as New Westshire, they want either small developers, especially minority developers, or sometimes I guess they could be a person who's building for themselves. But the city tends to want, I think they want to have someone who's a professional developer so they know the house will get built. From the city's point of view, if you buy a home and you're not a contractor, if you never built a home, it's a little risky as to whether you're going to be able to do it. So I think you'd have to have a conversation with the city about some of these small lots being set aside for owner builders, let's say, home buyer builders who would buy a vacant lot and build their own home. I don't think the city's marketed to that kind of buyer, and that might. But in the city we in the city do classes for first-time home buyers. We don't do classes for first-time home builders, but maybe it could be done, and that's something we'll think about. But I think the owner of the vacant lots primarily is the city of Boston through the Department of Neighborhood Development. If you're talking about those single family, 2-family lots, and I think you'd have to have a discussion with them. So that's about the best answer I can give you there.
And that was all I needed, was a clarification on a question, so I thank you for that. Circling back to Bartlett Yard, we currently have 2 buildings. We discussed the third of the elder building, and now the other. Like, what can we expect from the other buildings as well?
Okay. Well, one is that there's, in addition to the buildings, we're building a public arts park that's going to hopefully start construction next year. Oasis at Bartlett, and there's a oasisbartlett.com. You can find out all about that. But you'll see that, and that's meant for the whole community, not just folks who live there. And it's part of a whole program of open green space that's meant to be primarily for all of Roxbury. And then we've got a series of home ownership buildings coming up. Some of the streets, it's funny, the site is carved out of the hill, Fort Hill. So most of Giles Street and Lambert Ave are really about 20 feet higher than the main site that fronts on Washington Street. So those tend to be home ownership buildings that face out onto the existing neighborhood. That's the one at 15 Giles is already built. It's like that. There's going to be 2 more buildings up on Giles Street, and you turn the corner, and there'll be more home ownership buildings down Lambert Ave, all the way down to the corner of Lambert and Bartlett. So some of those will be affordable, and some of those will be market rate condos. And Nuestra is working with Wendell developers to build some of them, and we're kind of reaching out to partner with a minority developer to maybe buy some of those lots and build themselves, so that the economic opportunity is shared with other minority developers. So that's, I think, the big thing that's happening. And we did a projection of how much wealth those buyers could accumulate, say, over 10 years. And at one point I looked at 20 years of home price trends in Roxbury, because that'll take you through 1 or 2 recessions as well as the up cycles. And I think the average annual appreciation, like from, I think it was 1997 to 2017, was about 5%. So we ran the numbers at 3% to be conservative. And we figured the average home buyer of a home at Bartlett could realize about $135,000 in equity in 10 years. And all the home buyers together over 10 years is like 22 million. So there's real opportunity there for local folks to build equity and wealth. And it's not the only way, but home ownership is really the main way Americans create wealth. And
Sure.
we want to get as many local folks in those homes as possible. So I think that's the really exciting thing about what's coming in the next 3 or 4 years, is those home ownership opportunities.
So with those home ownership opportunities, we do know that when it comes to affordable, when you do decide to resale, all of that equity that you may or may not have accrued isn't necessarily going to go to you, because you have to then resell at an affordable price to somebody else. So how much, what does that look like for the affordable side of it?
Well, the city sets the rules, and they do allow 3% appreciation. That's one reason we ran the numbers at 3%. So if you can get real appreciation at 3%. It's not as much as in a big upcycle like before the Great Recession, and that was one of the problems. But things were appreciating well over 5% a year during a hot period. So you're not going to be able to get that quick gain in value, but you can get a slow but steady gain in value if you stay for a while. You can get 3% a year, and that could get you 100,000 of equity in a decade. So there is an opportunity there. If you're thinking about your home as a long-term investment, there is a chance to gain equity. For Nuestra, we think there needs to be opportunity without that kind of restriction, because if you buy a home, in the suburbs or most places, no one's restricting your equity. That's how families gain wealth. All the after World War II, all the white veterans, they moved out of Roxbury. They could buy in the suburbs. Nobody told them, oh, you can't make money from buying a home. And if you're Black, you can't buy because there are racial covenants. So why can't folks in Roxbury, Black and Latinx folks, have the opportunity to buy and own with no restriction? And part of our oral history effort on redlining is to make the case that maybe we need to change the rules to undo the harm that was done by redlining, and give folks a fair shot at gaining wealth. That's the same way that white folks did, in the decades since World War II. So it's sort of a two-part answer. You can get some appreciation with the restrictions, but we need to advocate for programs that allow for bigger, more equitable wealth creation.
I totally agree with you. And if there's any way that I personally can help push that narrative, we definitely are on board. I think, you said it exactly how I feel. Like there have been so many alterations for one group of people that others have been able to have access to. And so for you to be able to limit me in my generational wealth creation, it's kind of ass backwards because you want me to create
Yes.
wealth, but yet you want to limit the amount of wealth that I can create.
And they make a plug. There are a lot of great books about this, but one recent one people talk about a lot is called The Color of Law. And we've actually I bought about a dozen copies, and I've been sharing it with the Westra board members. And oh, there you go, including Reggie. And it's all about what you just said. That there's a lot of research now that shows without a doubt what happened and that it was intentional and that people were denied the opportunities, just like you were saying.
Okay, so shameless plug. Since
Yep.
you want a shameless plug, I would like to shameless plug. So I wrote a book called Finally Home, and it has the history of everything, like the history of home ownership, redlining, just everything regarding housing and race or discrimination. That is the first chapter. So people understand. Hold on 1 minute.
Great. I'm going to see it. And I hope you have it at Frugal Bookstore. Do they have it?
Oh, yes, it is at the bookstore in Roxbury.
That's where I buy I don't buy a book now these days unless it's from Frugal. So I'm going to go in and buy that.
Oh, awesome. So actually what I was going to ask you is whether or not we can find some type of partnership for when you guys do your first time home buyers. I would love to, of course, offer at a discount for those, like all of the questions, any client that works with me on buying a house, the prerequisite is read the book first because 95% of your questions are going to be answered unless it's like specific to your situation.
Yeah.
And so once you purchase from Frugal, you read it, let me know what you think. I am up for comments or suggestions on alterations that I can make to make the book better. But I find and I have to preface, I'm also a real estate agent. And so, just so I don't think you have any background on me. I started as a radio intern, and then I had my own show, and I created a spot from 5 to 7 a.m. And we talked about everything from Motivational Monday to Freaky Friday. But I was trying to understand gentrification back 7 years ago, and I wasn't getting it. I couldn't understand it. We've had people from the city on air. We've had people from real estate agents, and nobody could tell me other than like, oh, it's the cycle of real estate, and that just didn't make sense. So I ended up getting my real estate license, and once I did, that opened my eyes to everything that to be true and what people in the neighborhood have experienced but cannot verbalize.
Right.
And so I saw that there was a need that needed to be met. We are not taught this information in school. We're not taught this information at our dinner time conversations because it's not something that our parents knew to discuss with us. And so from cleaning your credit to how to save to what products are available for you as a first-time homeowner, the book covers everything. And so shameless plug, Finally Home.
I'm definitely going to buy the book. Our first-time home buyer program is a bit on hold with the pandemic. We're going to bring it back, and we do have brokers who do speak at classes, and we like to rotate them. So we'll definitely include you.
Thank you.
In our class speakers.
Absolutely. But we are coming to the top of the hour. David, I thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge. And this was, for me, I've learned a lot. As far as just being a resident, you're going to see a lot of me because I'm going to be engaged. Reggie B, my best friend, we're going to be arm in arm traveling the country together.
Okay.
But is there anything else that people of Roxbury, what else should we know about you and the organization to just be informed?
Well, go to our website, which you're showing now. Sign up for our newsletter. You can stay informed about what we do. But I guess I want to make a plug for some of the partners we work with, because the main thing everyone should do is get involved in some way. And there's some great groups in Roxbury. I mean, like I mentioned, Alternatives for Community Environment. They're trying to make environmental justice happen in Roxbury. A similar group is called Speak for the Trees Boston. We've been working with both of them to try and get more trees in Roxbury, because one of the things that happened in urban renewal is they knocked down a lot of trees, not just a lot of homes. And we had this heat island effect with asthma, and we need thousands more trees in Roxbury. So that I'd really encourage people to check out those two groups. I know City Life, Vita Urbana, does some great advocacy around gentrification, and Reclaim Roxbury. Also, they're really at the forefront. Amari Wright, Amani White, if you follow him, he's one of the leaders there. He's getting involved in politics, which I think is a good thing. So, no one group can do it alone. I encourage people to get involved with Nuestra if possible, but any of these other groups who are working to make Roxbury an equitable place for Black and Latinx folks to stay and not be displaced and to thrive. That's the main thing, is find a way to get involved toward that vision.
Thank you so much, David, for your time. We appreciate you and hope you have an amazing day.
You too. Thanks, Tayla.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I am Tayla Andre. Waking Up with Tayla Andre has little to nothing to do with the time of day that we link up, about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. So I said it before, but I do want to say it again for clarification. I misspoke by saying that we both talked to the BRA, but I forgot they don't want to talk to me no more because I talk trash about them every opportunity I get. BRA. But I am going to calm down a little bit so we can try and get them on air so then we can berate them on it. I'm so serious though. I love you. I appreciate you. And these are the conversations that we need to have, the knowledge that we don't have readily available to us, at our beck and call. And so I want to make us informed so we can make informed decisions. I want us to have all the knowledge that we can possibly have, because informed decisions are how we can make better choices. And so I thank you for your time. I love you. I appreciate it. Please head over to TaylaAndre for everything Tayla Andre, merchandise, the book, credit cleanup, t-shirts, hoodies, real estate needs, anything that you need. Tayla Andre, TaylaAndre. And I give out my real number, 617-459-0041. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. I will see you tomorrow for Freaky Friday. Don't forget, we can always be transparent, but if you don't want to be transparent and you want to be anonymous, just hit me in the inbox, boo. Mwah.